Welcome back. This is Portland Math Tutor. Today we are working on the practice test number 6. We are starting with section 3. This is the no calculator section. Here's the formula sheet. We can refer back to this as needed. Number 1, Salim wants to purchase tickets from a vendor to watch a tennis match. The vendor charges a one-time service fee for processing the purchase of the tickets. The equation t equals 15n plus 12 represents the total amount t in dollars Salim will pay for the n tickets. What does 12 represent in the equation? Okay. I've been hounding you guys about this over and over and over again. Got to understand or have to be very familiar with slope-intercept form. It's going to come up several times on the SAT. Now, the m in this, the coefficient on x is going to be the slope of the equation, the rate of change, and b is going to be the y-intercept. That's the starting value. That is the value of the equation. That is the value of the function when x equals 0. So, in this case, b equals 12. Okay, so that just means when the tickets are 0 tickets, the value of the function, the total cost, is $12. Okay, so let's look at this. A, the price of one ticket in dollars is 12. No, the price of each ticket, well, that's going to be the slope. That's going to be the rate of change. Every time a ticket, you increase the number of tickets by 1, the total cost will increase by whatever the coefficient on x is, or on the coefficient on your input. That would be 15. B, the amount of the service fee in dollars. Well, that sure sounds like it, right? We've got a set service fee, and regardless how many tickets we pay, we're going to be paying that $12. So I'm gonna say B. Let's read the rest of our solutions. The total number of dollars Salim will pay for one ticket. No, actually, for one ticket, Salim is going to pay, 12 plus 15. He'd pay $27 for one ticket. So it's not A and it's not C. D, the total amount in dollars Salim will pay for any number of tickets. That would be nice if he could just buy as many tickets as he wanted for $12, but as we can see, each additional ticket will be an additional $15. So that is also not a possible solution. Okay, number 2. A gardener buys 2 kinds of fertilizer. Fertilizer A contains 60% filler materials by weight, and fertilizer B contains 40% filler materials by weight. Together, the fertilizers bought by the gardener contain a total of 240 pounds of filler materials. Which equation models this relationship, where x is the number of pounds of fertilizer A and y is the number of pounds of fertilizer B? Okay, well, fertilizer A had 60% filler. Okay, 60% filler, and that is X. X is the number of pounds of fertilizer A. So we're going to need to multiply fertilizer A by 60%. And it looks like we only do that in one point here. Okay. Let's take a look at our fertilizer B. Fertilizer B contains 40% filler, and Y is the number of pounds of fertilizer B. So we need to multiply the number of pounds of fertilizer B times 40%. And again, that looks like it only happens once. Well, if we take 60% of fertilizer A and 40% of fertilizer B, that is going to result in 200 pounds. So B is our solution. Okay, 3. What is the sum of the complex numbers 2 plus 3i and 4 plus 8i, where I is the square root of -1? Alright. Well, here we're just combining like terms. We've got a 2 and a 4. Combine, that's going to be 6. And we can treat I as if it were just a variable. 3 i's and 8 i's. Well, it's going to be a total of 11 i's. So 6 plus 11i. Number 4. 4x minus 9 equals px plus t times px minus t. In the equation above, p and t are constants. Which of the following could be a value of p? Well, we know that when we expand this binomial, or sorry, expand this right here, binomial times a binomial, our first term is going to be px times px, which would be p squared x squared. That's the only term that's going to have a p squared and an x squared in it. The rest of the terms are going to be, well, that would be negative t times px. Then you have positive t times px, and then negative t squared. Really, we just have to focus on this first term here. Well, we know that p squared x squared equals 4x squared. Therefore, p squared must equal 4, and square root of 4 is 2. A would be the solution. Number 5. Which of the following is the graph of the equation y equals 2x minus 5 in the xy plane? Again, slope-intercept form, must be familiar with this. Okay, let's take a look. We got our y-intercept, in this case b equals -5. Okay, so let's rule some of these possibilities out. A, that's a y-intercept is what, 2.5. That cannot be it. C has a y-intercept of 5, positive 5. That can't be it. And the other two have a -5 y-intercept. Okay. Let's take a look at the slope. The slope in this case is 2. That's a positive slope, so it should be increasing from left to right. Well, it can't be B. It's gotta be D. Number 6. If x equals 2/3 y and y equals 18, what is the value of 2x minus 3? Very common type of problem. We need to solve for our x variable to then substitute it into the second equation. So we're going to use x equals 2/3, well, 2/3 y. We know what y equals. Y equals 18. So it's 2/3 of 18. I'm going to divide both the top and the bottom by 3. I'll get 2 times 6 in the numerator. So x is 12. And then I can take my second equation and I can plug in 12. Okay, so 2 times 12 is 24. And then 24 minus 3, 21. So our solution is A. 7. A bricklayer uses the formula N equals 7 LH to estimate the number of bricks in needed to build a wall that is L feet long and H feet high. Okay, so L feet long, H feet high. Which of the following correctly expresses L in terms of N and H? Okay, so this is a common type of problem. We have a function, and an equation, and we are solving for one of the variables. So we don't really care. We don't really need to know any other information other than the equation, which is N equals 7L times H. Okay, we're solving for L, so we need to divide both sides by 7 times H. 7 times H. That will cancel out the 7, cancel out the H. I'll be left with N over 7H equals L. And if we flip that, we're looking for N over 7H, and that looks like letter C. Number 8. The table above shows some values of the function w and t. Functions w and t. For which value of x is w of x and plus t of x equal x? So we're looking for outputs of w x and w of t. Oops. Not w of t, t of x, that add up to x. Okay, well, we're looking for the outputs of w and the outputs of t. If I add -1 and -3, I'll get -4. Well, that does not work. If I add 3 and -1, well, that equals 2. So 2, the output of 2 is going to be the input of 2, x equals 2, is our solution. Number 9. If the square root of x plus square root of 9 equals square root of 64, what is the value of x? Okay. So, easy enough. We know the square root of 9, well, that's 3. We know the square root of 64 is 8. If I subtract 3 from both sides, I'll get the square root of x equals 5. Well, square root of x is 5. To undo that square root, we need to square both sides. So then undo the square root on the left, and 5 squared is 25. C is our answer. Number 10. Jamie is preparing for a bicycle race. His goal is to bicycle an average of at least 280 miles per week for 4 weeks. He bicycled 240 miles the first week, 310 miles the second week, and 320 miles the third week. Which inequality can be used to represent the number of miles x Jamie could bicycle on the 4th week to meet his goal? Okay, well, I'm just going to take a look at these. Okay, so right off the bat, I think we need to look at what is an average. An average is going to be the sum of each of the weeks, right? So that's going to be 280. He wants to average 280. He bicycled the first week 240. It's going to be 240 plus 310 for the second week, And then the third week was 320. And we don't know what the fourth week is, but we know that if we add those all up and we divide by the number of weeks, 4, that will be the average. And we want the average, he said we want the average to be at least 280. 280. Okay, well, I'm looking at my expressions here, and the first one doesn't look right, dividing the first 3 by 3, but then the fourth week is kind of floating out there all by itself. Then the next, I'm not sure how that works. Doesn't have any resemblance to our inequality on the right. The next, C, it's dividing each of the first 3 terms by 4, but x is not being divided by 4. So if that were x divided by 4, that would be a true statement. That would be what we're looking for, but it's not. The last one is a little bit different, right? Doesn't exactly look like our inequality, but if we multiply both sides times 4, that's what we'll end up with. So that is the inequality, D. Number 11. The vertex of the parabola in the xy plane above is 0, C. Okay, so 0, 0, C. Okay, now, which of the following is true about the parabola with the equation y equals negative a times x minus b squared plus c? Okay, well, this is just a transformation question. We want to think about what's the transformation that happens first. The first transformation that we're gonna do is that that negative leading coefficient is going to apply. Okay, and that negative leading coefficient, if we start with our parent function like, we start with our parent function as, that's my pretty graph there, like this, then that negative leading coefficient is going to make it open down. Okay. The second thing that we're going to look at is this minus b. Okay. Well, that minus b is going to shift the function to the right. So the new graph will look something like this. Okay, where this point is b, comma 0. Okay. All right. Now we can look at the third thing that happens. It's this. This plus c. That plus c is going to shift the graph up c units. So we're going to have, we came up, and this is c, we came up to c units, so our new vertex is going to be here. And the vertex will be at b, comma, c. Okay? Alright, so in green, that's our final graph. So let's take a look at the possible solutions. The vertex is BC, yeah, and opens upward. Oh, no, that's not it. Almost. The vertex is at BC, but opens down. B, the vertex is BC, is at BC, and the graph opens downward. Yeah, that's seems like our best choice so far. The vertex is at negative B, comma C. Nope. The vertex is at negative B. Okay, so those are both not possible. Okay, number 12. Which of the following is equivalent to 4x squared plus 6x over 4x plus 2? looking at my solutions here, and it looks like I've got a quotient with a remainder for the second two, and just a simplified expression for the first two. So I think that dividing this out would be the best solution. So I'm going to use algebraic long division, and it's going to look like so. Okay. So I'm thinking, how many times does 4x go into, or what do I have to multiply 4x by to get 4x squared? Well, I need to multiply 4x by x. Okay. Well, now I'm going to multiply back through, and I put that on top of my linear terms. X times 4x is 4x squared. That's good. X times 2 is 2x. Okay. Now I'm going to subtract this, just like long division. Well, my 4x squared is going to cancel out, and then I have 6x minus positive 2x. It's going to leave me with 4x. Okay. Well, how many times? What do I have to multiply? I'm going to insert a dummy term here. What do I have to multiply 4x by to get 4x? Drop my 0. Well, I have to multiply by 1. Okay, so plus 1, and then I multiply back through, so 1 times 4x is 4x, and 1 times 2 is 2. Okay, now I'm going to subtract that. My 4x's cancel, and I'm left with 0 minus positive 2, which is negative 2. Okay. Now, there's nothing that 4x can be multiplied to equal negative 2. This is my remainder. So I've got my quotient and I've got my remainder. So what this actually equals is going to be x plus 1 plus negative 2. That negative 2 never got divided by 4x plus 2 because it wasn't 4x plus 2 couldn't go into it. So that's what we're left with, and we see that our solution is going to be D. Now that's a minus right there, minus 2 over 4x plus 2, but that's the same as plus a negative. Okay, so D is your solution. Number 13, 2x squared minus 4x equals t. In the equation above, t is a constant. If the equation has no real solutions, which of the following could be the value of t? Okay, so this is a quadratic equation, and to determine how many solutions a quadratic has, we use something called the discriminant. And the discriminant comes out of the quadratic formula. It's the piece underneath the square root. It's b squared minus 4ac. Now, if that piece, let's a little refresher on the quadratic formula, x equals negative b plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Well, if this piece under the square root, what we call the discriminant, is negative, so d is less than 0, well then there's that you can't take the square root of a negative, so there's going to be no real solutions. No real solutions. That's what we're looking for. If d is greater than 0, well, the square root of a positive number is just, there's going to be two possible solutions. It's going to be the positive and negative. So this is going to have two solutions. And if d equals 0, there will be, well, the square root of 0 is just 0, so there's only one solution in that case. One solution. So we're looking for when the discriminant has no real solutions, when the discriminant is less than 0. Okay, so we're going to take our quadratic here. Now, to figure out what the discriminant is, we need to know what A, B, and C are. So we need to write it in standard form. I'm going to subtract t from both sides. Now that we're in standard form, I see that A equals 2, B equals -4, and C equals -t. Okay, so I've got my B value, which is -4. That's going to be squared, minus 4 times A, which is 2, times C, which is -t. And I want to know when that is less than 0. Okay, I'm going to simplify the left side. -4 squared is 16. And then this is going to simplify. -4 times 2 is -8 times -t. That's going to be plus 8t is less than 0. Okay. So if I could solve for t here, that would give me an inequality that tells me what my possible values of t are. So I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides. -16. 8t is less than -16. And I can divide by 2. So I get 8 is less than -2. Well, t is only less than -2 in one place. That's going to be A. Number 14. A laundry service is buying detergent and fabric softener from its supplier. The supplier will deliver no more than 300 pounds in a shipment. Okay. No more than 300 pounds in a shipment. That's important, I believe. Each container of detergent weighs 7.3 pounds, and each container of fabric softener weighs 6.2 pounds. The service wants to buy at least twice as many containers of detergent as containers of fabric softener. Let D represent the let D represent the number of containers of detergent, and S represent the number of containers of fabric softener. So we have detergent and we have fabric softener. So where D and S are non-negative integers. Okay, that would make sense because these are quantities that we're purchasing. Which of the following systems of inequalities best represents the situation? So we know that no more than 300 pounds is going to be a shipment, so the shipment has to be less than or equal to 300 pounds. And we know that that shipment's going to be made up of containers of detergent and containers of fabric softener. Well, the detergent is going to be, the total weight of all the containers of detergent will be 7.35 pounds times the number of containers of detergent, and likewise the total weight of the fabric softener is going to be 6.2 pounds times the number of containers of fabric softener. Okay, and we know that also the service wants to buy twice as many containers of detergent, so at least twice as many containers, so D has to be at least equal to or greater than twice the number of fabric softener containers. So let's take that and let's take a look at our inequalities down here. Keeping in mind that we can flip both of these inequalities or flip either of the inequalities. Just looking at our second inequality here, I'm going to go ahead and rule out B, and I'm going to rule out D, because those have 2 times d is greater than s, which is the opposite of what we have, or it's not the same. So now let's look at the other inequality for weight. And we see that C has a weight of 14.7 for each container of detergent. Well, that doesn't work. And then if we look at A, we will see that yes, A is identical to our inequalities. 15. Which of the following is equivalent to A plus B over 2 squared? Okay, so you can just you could just do this in your head, but we know that our first term is going to be A squared. Well, that works for all of these. A squared is included in all of these expressions. We know our last term is going to be b over 2 squared. Okay, well, b over 2 squared would be b squared over 2 squared. That rules out the first one, and that rules out the second one. Well, we also know that we're going to have some stuff in the middle. Yeah, we're going to have a times b over 2 plus a times b over 2. Or sorry, a times b over 2 plus b over 2 times a. Same thing. Well, that means that we're going to have something in the middle. Just out of deduction, I'm going to say D. But let's go ahead and expand this to show you how you can do it longhand. Okay, so we're going to have a squared, a times a, is a squared. Then we're going to have a times b over 2, which is going to be ab over 2. Then we're going to have b over 2 times a, which is going to be ab over 2. And then we're going to have b over 2 times b over 2, which is going to be b squared over 4. Well, now we're really focused on these center two terms here. Well, half of ab plus half of ab is going to be ab. Okay, so that is our answer, D. 16. If a to the b on 4 equals 16 for positive integers a and b, what is one possible value of b? Okay, so we're going to have to use some properties of exponents here. We know that if we have a fractional exponent, the numerator is an exponent, and the denominator is a root. So what's significant here is, well, we're just looking for one possible value of b. We should look at the fact that 16 to the first power equals 16. Well, how would b over 4, how would that equal 1? Well, if b were equal to 4. So a possible value of b would be 4. Number 17. What value of t is the solution of the equation above? Oh, drop my pen. Okay. Well, 2/3 t equals 5/2. To get rid of that coefficient on the left, we need to multiply both sides by the reciprocal, or the multiplicative inverse. Okay, that's going to cancel out our, it's going to make that equal to 1 on the left. So we've got t And then on the right, we can't cancel any common factors, so it's just going to be 15 fourths. That is our answer. Okay, 18. In the figure above, BD is parallel to AE. Okay, so BD is parallel to AE. What is the length of CE? So we're looking for CE. Okay, so what you should recognize here is that we have two similar triangles. They're similar because this small triangle, CBD, is a right triangle with angle C, and then triangle CAE, so we have triangle CBD, and we know that that is similar to triangle CAE, and they both share an angle at C. Okay, so that means that they're similar, and they both share this angle as well. Now, because of that, their side lengths are going to be proportional. So why don't we go in, calculate the length of CD, and we know that that's going to be proportional to CE. Well, CD is we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. I know that 6 squared plus 8 squared is going to equal CD squared. Okay, 6 squared is 36, 8 squared is 64, 36 plus 64 is 100. We know that that is CD squared. Take the square root of both sides. So we know that CD equals 10. CD equals 10. Alright, well, if CD equals 10, then we can set up a proportion. We know that 6 on the smaller triangle is to 18 on the larger, as 10 on the smaller triangle is to, well, CE. Exactly what we're trying to find. Alright, now I'm just going to reduce this fraction on the left here to 1/3. Now I know if I cross multiply 1 times CE 3 times 10, I'll get CE equals 30. And that's the length of this whole side. Number 19. How many liters of a 25% saline solution must be added to 3 liters of a 10% saline solution to obtain a 15% saline solution? Okay, so let's start out with what we have. We have 3 liters at a 10% saline solution, and we're going to add to that some quantity in liters of a 25% saline solution. Well, after we do that, how many liters are we going to have? Well, we're going to have 3 plus X liters. And that is going to be at a saline solution of 0.15. So let's simplify our expression and let's solve for X. We're going to have 3/10 plus 2500 times X. And if we distribute this 0.15, we're going to get 4500 plus 0.15x. Okay. I'm going to subtract 3/10 from both sides. Minus 3/10. I'm going to get 0.25x equals, well, that's going to be 0.15 plus 0.15x. Subtract 1500x from both sides, and I will get 0.1x, or 1/10 x equals 0.15. Okay, so I know if I multiply both sides by 10, that should remedy my get rid of my coefficient on x on the left. So if I multiply both sides by 10, I'll get x on the left, and the right times 10 would be 1.5. So we need to add 1.5 liters of a 25% saline solution to bring up our percentage in our saline solution to 15%. 20. Points A and B lie on a circle with radius 1, and arc AB has a length pi on 3. What fraction of the circumference of the circle is the length of arc AB? Okay, well, what fraction of the circle? Well, that's part to whole, right? So we want to know part to whole, and we know that the part is pi on 3, and we just need to figure out what the whole is. So we have pi on 3 for our part. We just need to figure out what the whole is. Okay. Well, the whole is the circumference of the circle. Circumference of a circle equals 2 pi times radius. Okay, so in this case, we know the radius is 1, so we know the circumference of our circle equals 2 pi. Okay, so then our part to whole fraction here is going to be pi on 3 divided by 2 pi. Okay, well, we know dividing by numbers the same as multiplying by its reciprocal, so let's turn this into multiplication. Pi on 3 times 1 over 2 pi. Cancel common factors, and as we multiply across, we're just going to get 1/6. So 1/6 would be our solution. Okay. Section 4. This is the calculator section, so let's get going. Again, this is our reference table, or reference our formula sheet. We can come back to this if needed. Okay, number 1. Which expression is equivalent to 2x squared minus 4 minus negative 3x squared plus 2x minus 7? Alright, so all we need to do is distribute that negative and then combine like terms. On the first set of parentheses, what we're distributing is a positive 1, so nothing changes. So we've got 2x squared minus 4, and then a negative times a negative is a positive 3x squared, and then we have minus 2x, and then plus 7. Okay, so we've got 2x squared and 3x squared, that's 5x squared. We've got negative 2x, and we can see right away our answer is going to be A, but then we might as well just go ahead and do the rest of it. We have negative 4 and positive 7, that's going to be plus 3. Our answer is A. Number 2. The graph above shows the position of Paul and Mark during a race. Paul and Mark each ran at a constant rate and Mark was given a head start to shorten the distance he needed to run. Paul finished the race in 6 seconds, and Mark finished the race in 10 seconds. According to the graph, Mark was given a head start of how many yards? Okay, well, if we're looking at this graph, we should see right away that at 0 seconds, Paul was at 0, and at 0 seconds, Mark was at, well, that looks like 18. Mark was 18 at 0 seconds. So the head start was 18 yards. Okay. This looks a little small, so I'm going to enlarge it. Copy and paste. So I'm going to have so we got our graphs here, and then we've got our question. Okay. It's a little bit large. 3. Snow fell and then stopped for a time. When the snow began to fall again, it fell at a faster rate than it had initially. Assuming that none of the snow melted during the time indicated, which of the following graphs could model the total accumulation of snow versus time? Okay. Well, let's think about what happened here. Snow fell and then stopped for a time. Okay, well, if it stopped, then it's going to stop accumulating, right? So it's going to stop getting deeper. D continues to get deeper and deeper and deeper. Never stops snowing. That can't be it. Then it says, when the snow began to fall again, it fell faster, at a faster rate than it had initially. Okay, so then it should accumulate faster. The rate of change should be greater during the third interval, the interval after that, the rest period. And C actually shows that the accumulation went down, so maybe the snow melted. That didn't happen. B, well, it accumulated very quickly on the first interval, and in the second interval it's accumulating slowly. So that's not it. And yes, A is our solution. It accumulates slowly, it stops accumulating, and then accumulates faster. So A is our solution. Number 4, a website hosting service charges businesses a one-time setup fee of $350 plus D dollars for each month. If a business owner paid $1,010 for the first 12 months, including the setup fee, what is the value of D? Okay, so I don't know how many times I can say this, but you guys really got to be confident in your use of linear equations for the SAT. This is what we're going to use here. If we have a one-time setup fee, that's going to be our D. It's going to be the expense at 0 months. Okay, so we know that our expense is going to be equal to something, some monthly cost, some rate of change in our expense, plus that one-time startup fee of $350. Okay, and it says that it's D dollars. It says that it's D dollars for each month. Okay, so I can maybe I'll write that at DX plus 350. And we know we spent $110 for the first 12 months. So when X, our input, is 12, Y, our output, should be 1,010. All right, I'm going to write that on the left here. 1,010 equals D times 12 plus 350. Okay, so we're going to solve this equation for D minus 350 from both sides. Okay, I'm going to get D, and actually I'm going to write that as 12D. I like to write the coefficient first. And I'm going to pull up my calculator for this. We got 1,010 minus 350 is 660. Okay. And we can divide both sides by 12. Cancels out. Divide this side by 12 equals D. And pull up my calculator. 660 divided by 12 equals 55. So the monthly rate is $55. Number 5. Which of the following inequalities is equivalent to the inequality above? Okay, looks like they're all in the same orientation. They both have our x and our y term on the left. But what I notice about our inequality is that there are some common factors. And I realize that I could divide everything by 3. So I divide the first term by 3, second term by 3, and 12 by 3. I'm going to get 2x minus 3y is greater than 4. And I see that that is B. 2x minus 3y is greater than 4. Number 6. Where do people get most of their medical information? Okay. The table above shows a summary of 1,200 responses to a survey question. Based on the table, how many of those surveyed get most of their medical information from either a doctor or the internet? So it's either a doctor or the internet. Well, a doctor was 63%, the internet was 13%. Altogether, that's going to be 76%. All right, and we know that there were a total of 76%, and there was a total of 1,200 responses. So we're going to multiply 1,200 times 0.76. And I'm going to pull up my calculator, and I get 1,200 times 0.76 equals 912. 912 people get most of their information from the doctor or the internet. Number 7. The members of a city council wanted to assess the opinions of all city residents about converting an open field into a dog park. The council surveyed a sample of 500 city residents who own dogs. The survey showed that the majority of those sampled were in favor of the dog park. Which of the following is true about the city council's survey? Okay, so I don't know that that's necessarily going to be representative of the entire population. There very likely is some bias among dog owners. Dog owners probably prefer a dog park more than non-dog owners. But let's take a look at these answers. A. It shows that the majority of city residents are in favor of the dog park. No. It shows that the majority of dog owners are in favor of the dog park. It was not a random sample. This B. The survey sample should have included more residents who are dog owners. Well, that's interesting because it says that all of the respondents own dogs. So I'm not sure how more of the respondents could have owned dogs. So that's not possible. C. The survey sample should have consisted entirely of residents who do not own dogs. Well, again, we talked about how this sample was biased because it only sampled people who own dogs. If you just sample people who don't own dogs, that would also be biased. It might result in a different outcome in the survey results, but they're both biased samples. D, the survey sample is biased because it is not representative of all city residents. Exactly like we spoke about. 8. Ice cream and topping selections. The table above shows the flavors of ice cream and the toppings chosen by the people at a party. Each person chose one flavor of ice cream and one topping. Of the people who chose vanilla ice cream, what fraction chose hot fudge as a topping? So we're just considering the people who chose vanilla. Okay? Of the people who chose vanilla, we're saying how many people chose hot fudge? Well, 8 chose hot fudge out of that group, and that group was a total of 8 plus 5 is 13. So the whole is 13. The part that we're concerned with is 8. 8/13. 8/13, that's D. Number 9. The total area of a coastal city is 92.1 square miles, of which 11.3 square miles is water. If the city had a population of 621,000 people in the year 2010, which of the following is closest to the population density and people per square mile of land area in the city at that time? Well, we have to understand, or we have to keep in mind here that 11.3, so there's 11.3 square miles is water, so that's not land area. There's this much 92.1 square miles in the city, but we have to subtract out 11.3 square miles that was water. Okay, I'm going to do that on my calculator. 92.1 minus 11.3. So there's 80.8 square miles of land in the city. Okay, so that's our land area, and we know that there are 621,000 people in the city, and we want to know the number per square mile. So we're going to do population per miles. Well, if we divide the top and the bottom by 80.8, we're going to get the population per square mile. And these are square miles. They're square miles. Okay, so I'm going to do it on my calculator. 621,000 divided by 80.8. And we see that there is a population density of 7,680, and I'm going to round to the nearest whole person, 86 people per square mile. And that is closest to B. B at 7,690 people per square mile. Number 10. Between 1497 and 1500, Amerigo Vespucci embarked on 2 voyages to the New World. According to Vespucci's letters, the first voyage lasted 43 days, longer than the second voyage, and the 2 voyages combined lasted a total of 1,003 days. How many days did the second voyage last? Okay, well, I'm just going to use F and S for the first and second voyages, and we're going to see that we have a first bit of information here, is that the first voyage lasted 43 days longer than the second voyage. Okay, great. So I am going to say that the first voyage, well, that must be the second voyage plus 43 days. Excellent. Okay, and the second bit of information that they give us is that the two voyages combined lasted a total of 1,003 days. Okay, so F plus S, or first plus second voyage, equals 1,003 days. Okay, so now we want to know how many days did the second voyage last. Well, if we want to solve for the second voyage, then we want to eliminate the first voyage, or we want to eliminate F. Well, that's great because we already know what F equals, so we can substitute in the value of F, which is S plus 43, okay, plus the second voyage equaled 1,003 days. Okay, combine like terms, I'm going to get 2 times the second voyage plus 43 equals 1,003. Okay, subtract 43 from both sides. I do that on my calculator. 1,003 minus 43, that equals 960. And then I can divide both sides by 2. Well, that's going to be 960 divided by 2. Type that in my calculator. Equals 480. 480 days for the second voyage. Number 11. For the solution xy to the system of equations above, what is the value of x minus y? Perfect. Okay, so we need to figure out what x is and what y is. So it doesn't really matter what we solve for first, because we're going to have to substitute it back in to solve for the other variable anyways. So I noticed right away that I have some additive inverse on my coefficients on y, and that means that if I just add the equations together right off the bat, my y's will cancel out. I have 7x plus 6x, that's going to be 13x, and 8 plus 5 is 13. Well, x must equal 1. Alright, now I need to substitute that back into my equation, or one of my equations. I'm going to use the first equation, so I've got 7 times 1 plus 3y equals 8. Well, that's going to be, I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. Minus 7. I'm going to get 3y equals 1. Okay, so then y must equal 1 on 3. Okay, so I've got my x, I've got my y. I want to know x minus y. Well, that's going to be 1 minus 1/3. Well, 1 is just 3/3, so 1 minus 1/3 is just 2/3. So B is our solution. All right, number 12. Well, this isn't 12. This is going to be 12 through 14. But this is the information. Just we're going to look at it all in one place, and then we're going to look at pieces of it to answer questions 12, 13, and 14. This is a graph of sunflower height over time, and what they give us here is a table, a graph, and then they give us some information here, a verbal description. So let's read what they've got here. In 1919, H.S. Reed and R.H. Holland published a paper on the growth of sunflowers. Included in the paper were the table and graph above, which show the height in centimeters of a sunflower T days after a sunflower begins to grow. Okay, so we've got a table of values here. That table of values is just plotted on the XY plane with time on the horizontal axis and height on the vertical axis. So let's just dive in. Let's start with number 12. Number 12. Of which of the following time periods is the average growth rate of the sunflower the least? Okay, so we want the average growth rate the least. Okay. Well, the growth rate is going to be the change in height over the change in time. So we're looking for change in height over change in time. Well, that's going to be the slope of the graph. Okay, so we want to know where the slope of the graph is the least. Okay, well, let's just eyeball it to start. Let's just get a general idea, and we might be able to pick a solution just based on that. So the first interval is 0 to 20. 21. 0 to 21. It's going to be a line like that. All right, 21 to 42. Well, it's going to be 21 to 42. Well, that's clearly going to be steeper, or, well, I don't know about clearly, but it appears to be steeper. Then we have C, 42 to 63. 42 to 63. That, I don't know, that might not be as steep as the last one. And then 63 to 84. 63 to 84. Oh boy. Okay, so that is going to be almost flat. It appears to be that the growth rate is the least on the fourth interval, D, from 63 to 84 days. Okay, number 13. The function h defined h of t equals at plus b, where a and b are constants, models the height in centimeters of the sunflower after t days of growth, during a time period in which the growth is approximately linear. What does a represent? Okay. Again, you really can't say this enough. You have to be familiar with slope-intercept form of the linear equation. Okay, this is going to come up all the time on the SAT. So, well, in this case, h of t function notation is probably going to be a good thing to be familiar with as well. Okay, so h of t equals a times t plus b. Okay, so we know that m, well, that's our rate of change. In this case, a is in that position. So a is the rate of change of the output, which is the height. Okay, let's read our answers. So A, the predicted number of centimeters the sunflower grows each day during the time period. Well, that would be true if t is in days, and of course it is. If we look back at our setup here, t is in days, units of days. So, and we know that the output h is in centimeters, because it says, h, or height, in centimeters. So right off the bat, I'm thinking that A is going to be our solution. But let's read through. B, the predicted height in centimeters of the sunflower at the beginning of the period. No, well, the beginning of the period would be our starting value, which would be B. So that's not what we're looking for. C, the predicted height in centimeters of the sunflower at the end of the period. Well, no, that's also doesn't fit what we're looking for. And D, the predicted total increase in the height of the sunflower in centimeters during the period. That is also not what we're looking for. A is our solution. Alright, number 14. The growth rate of the sunflower from day 14 to day 35 is nearly constant. On this interval, which of the following equations best models the height h in centimeters of the sunflower t days after it begins to grow? Okay, so we're looking at a linear relationship, or a linear function that's going to be modeled between 2 points, day 14 and day 35. Okay, so if they're using that interval and they're saying that it's nearly constant, and that interval can model the growth rate of the sunflower between that in that interval, then to write the equation, again, guess what comes back up? Y equals mx plus b. Okay, so I think that if we can find the slope, if we can find the slope is different for each of the solutions here. Therefore, if we can find a slope, we should be able to pick which equation we want to select. Alright, so to calculate the slope is the change in the output, or change in your y, over the change in your x, change in your input. Our output in this case is the height in centimeters. So it's going to be, the change in the height is going to be the difference in the height. It's 131 minus 36.36 over the change in the input, which is 35 over 14. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to use my calculator for this one. Let's see, 131 minus 36.36. So the change in the height is 94.64, and the change in the days, well, that's just going to be 21. Okay, so I'm going to do 94.63 divided by 21, and I'm going to get approximately 4.5. Okay, so that's the rate of change in the height per day. Well, right off the bat, I can see that I do have a solution here. That's going to be B. B is my solution. 15. Which of the following equations relates y to x for the values in the table above? Okay, so our solutions here are, we've got two linear and two exponential. So let's look at this and let's see, is it growing exponentially or decaying exponentially, or is it increasing or decreasing linearly? Alright, well, to figure that out, let's look at the rate of change on two intervals, and is it the same? So on the interval from 1 to 2, the change in the output is on the interval from 1 to 2, the change in the output is 25 over 4 minus 11 over 4. So it changes 14 over 4. All right, well, let's look at a change from the 4th to the 5th on x. Well, that would be 67 over 4 minus 53 over 4. Well, that's going to change, looks like 14 over 4. So it looks like we have a linear change in our relationship here. So we can rule out the first two because those are exponential. Okay. Now, we just need to see what that rate of change is. Well, the rate of change for both of these is over 1 unit of x, right? So this is the change in y for both of these. That's change in y. That's the change in y. It's the slope is change in y divided by the change in x. Change in x is just 1 for both these intervals. So let's just reduce these. We would see that this is 7 halves. This is 7 halves. Okay. Well, 7 halves divided by 1, which is the delta x, so the change in x, that would just be a rate of change of 7 halves. And that is D. Number 16. Triangles ABC and DEF are shown above. Which of the following is equal to the ratio BC to AB? Okay. Right off the bat, I'm not sure exactly how we're going to solve this, but the first thing that I do notice is that 58 plus 32, that equals 90. So that means that D and A are complementary. Well, there's a special relationship between the sine and cosine of complementary angles. If we know, for instance, I'll draw a triangle here, and I know that this is, let's say, A, B, and C, and we will write in the sides here, and we know that sine of an angle is equal to opposite over hypotenuse in a right triangle. Opposite over hypotenuse, so sine of A should equal opposite A over hypotenuse, C. Cosine of an angle equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So cosine of B is going to equal adjacent A over hypotenuse, C. Okay, well, in this triangle, A and B are complementary. Okay, so therefore we know that the sine of an angle and the cosine of its complement are going to be equal. We know that A and D are complementary. Therefore, the sine of A will equal the cosine of D. What is the cosine of A? The sine of A. Sine of A is going to be opposite over hypotenuse. The cosine of D is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. Well, it's going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. All right. So sine of A is going to be BC over AB. That's handy. That's exactly what we were looking for. the cosine of D is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse, which is df over dE. Okay, well, we have our solution, right? We know that the ratio BC over AB is equal to dF over dE. Our answer is going to be B. Number 17. When designing a stairway, an architect can use the riser-tread formula, 2h plus d equals 25, where h is the riser height in inches and d is the tread depth in inches. So let's just be clear about what riser height and tread depth are. So h is the riser height. Well, riser height is going to be this right here, and tread depth, D, tread depth, is going to be this right here, how deep the stair is. For any given stairway, the riser heights are the same and the tread depths are the same for all steps in the stairway, in that stairway. The number of steps in a stairway is the number of its risers. For example, there are 5 steps in the stairway in the figure above. The total rise of the stairway is the sum of the riser heights as shown in the figure. Okay, so we've got wanted this guy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 riser heights, and therefore there are 5 steps. Okay, number 17. Which of the following expresses the riser height in terms of tread depth? Okay, well, this is we're going to use the equation that we're given. I'll do that again. We were given 2h plus d equals 25. And we want to solve all of these. We are solving for h, the riser height. So all we're doing is solving an equation for h. That should be pretty straightforward. So we're going to subtract d from both sides. We get 2h, move everything over a little bit, equals 25 minus d. And then we're going to have to divide everything by 2. Okay, so that's going to be h equals, and it looks like for all of these answers here, they pulled that dividing by 2 out front as a coefficient of 1/2. That's fine. 1/2 of 25 minus d. Okay, so h equals 1/2 25 minus d. That is going to be answer B. Number 18. Some building codes require that for indoor stairways, the tread depth must be at least 9 inches, and the riser height must be at least 5 inches. According to the riser tread formula, which of the following inequalities represents a set of all possible values for the riser height that meets this code requirement? Perfect. So we know that the tread depth, let's see, riser height. Okay, we're looking at riser height. We know the riser height has to be at least 5 inches. So the riser height has to be greater than or equal to 5 inches. We also know that the tread depth must be at least 9 inches. Okay, so it looks like all of our inequalities are in terms of h, so why don't we take our equation that we were given and solve that for d so we can eliminate that quantity, or that variable. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with 20, not that way. I'm going to start with 2h plus d equals 25, and I'll get that d equals 25 minus 2h. Well, if we know that d is equal to this expression, and we know that d has to be greater than 9, then we can do a substitution here, and we get that 25 minus 2h is greater than 9. Now, if we solve for h, well, we know h has to be greater than 5, and we'll get another inequality here for h. So let's see what we get. My pen. I'm going to subtract 25 from both sides. We get 9 minus 25 is negative 16. Okay, now I'm going to divide by negative 2. And when you divide by negative 2, you have to, oops, getting ahead of myself. When you divide by a negative on both sides of an inequality, you have to flip the inequality. So we see that h has to be greater than, less than 8. So if we put together this inequality and this inequality, we'll see that h has to be greater than 5, so 5 is less than or equal to h, and we know that h has to be less than or equal to 8. Okay, so that corresponds to C. C will be our solution for 18. Number 19. An architect wants to use the riser tread formula to design a stairway with a total rise of 9 feet, a riser height between 7 and 8 inches, and an odd number of steps. With the architect's constants, which of the following must be the tread depth in inches of the stairway? Okay, so we want the total rise. Oops. See if I can get a pen here. We want the total rise to be 9 feet. Now that's going to be 9 feet, but since we're going to be in terms of inches here, we should probably convert that to inches. So 9 feet in inches will be 9 times 12. It's going to be 108. So the total height of the staircase is going to be, or total rise, will be 108. And we know that that's going to be equal to the number of steps times h, the depth of the steps. We also know that the minimum riser height is going to be 7 inches, and the maximum riser height would be 8 inches. Okay, so the maximum number of steps would be when the riser height is the smallest. So the maximum number of steps would be 108 divided by 7, and the minimum number of steps would be 108 divided by 8. So that'll be less than or equal to, in number of steps, which would be less than or equal to 107 108 divided by 7. If we take the quotient on the left and on the right, I'm going to pull up a calculator. It'd be 108 divided by 8 would be 13.5, on the left here. Sorry, 108 divided by 8 would be 13.5. Has to be less than or equal to the number of steps, which has to be less than or equal to 108 divided by 7, less than 15.443. We can also see that the number of steps has to be an integer, a whole integer. So possible values are going to be greater than 13.5. That'd be 14. Less than 15.4. Well, that'd be 15. And we know that our number of steps has to be odd. So the number of steps has to be 15. Now that we know that we have 15 steps, we can divide the total height, 108, by 15 to figure out our tread depth. And that'd be 108 on my calculator divided by 15. It's going to be 7.2 inches as our tread depth. Sorry, our tread height. The height of each step would be 7.2 inches. Okay, well, we're going to use that's our h value, and we are going to figure out the tread depth using our formula. Okay, so I'm going to plug that in for h. We get 2 times 7.2. Oh boy, I'm just going to run out of room here. Let's try and squeeze this in. 2 times 7.2 plus d equals 25. Well, 2 times 7.2, that's 14.4, equals 25, plus d equals 25. Subtract 14.4 from both sides. That's going to be 25 minus 14.4. It's going to be 10.6. 10.6. So the tread depth needs to be 10.6 inches. Number 20. What is the sum of the solutions to x minus 6 times x plus 7/10 equals 0? Well, we just need to figure out the actual value of the solutions. The value of the solutions is going to be whatever makes our first factor equal 0, and our other solution will be whatever makes 0.7 equal 0. Well, the factor that makes x minus 6 equals 0, that's going to be, let's get a pen here, it's going to be x equals 6, and the factor that makes x plus 0.7 equals 0 is going to be negative 0.7. And if we want the sum of those two, the sum of 6 and negative 0.7, that's going to be positive 5.3, negative 5 3/10. 21. A study was done on the weights of different types of fish in a pond. A random sample of fish were caught and marked in order to ensure that none were weighed more than once. The sample contained 150 largemouth bass, of which 30% weighed more than 2 pounds. Which of the following conclusions is best supported by the sample data? The majority of all fish in the pond weigh less than 2 pounds. Well, that's a possibility, but this is only a sample of largemouth bass. This is only a sample of 150 largemouth bass. So this is not talking about all fish, yeah? So I'm gonna rule out solution A. B, the average weight of all fish in the pond is approximately 2 pounds. We know that 30% weigh more than 2 pounds, so 70% weigh less. So the the mean or the average could not possibly be 2 pounds. The mean would have to be less than 2 pounds because the majority weigh less than 2 pounds. Approximately 30% of all fish in the pond weigh more than 2 pounds. Well, again, that we're not talking about all fish. We didn't sample all fish. We only sampled largemouth bass. So that we cannot extrapolate to the entire fish population. So just based on that, we know D has to be our solution. Let's read through it. Approximately 30% of all largemouth bass in the pond weigh more than 2 pounds. Yes, if the sample is representative of the population and the sample showed that 30% weighed more than 2 pounds, then the population should have 30% having a weight greater than 2 pounds. Number 22. A number of states with 10 or more electoral votes in 2008. Very well. In 2008, there were 21 states with 10 or more electoral votes, as shown in the table above. Based on the table, what was the median? Didn't want that one, highlighter. Number of electoral votes. Okay, well, median means middle. Median equates to middle. So we want to find the middle value. All right, well, we know we have 21 states. To find the nth term that's in the center of the data, the middle of the data, we are going to take the number of data plus 1 divided by 2. That's going to be 21 plus 1 divided by 2. 22 divided by 2, 11. So the 11th data point should be in the middle, or the 11th data point will be the median value for this data set. Okay, so we want to order the data, and we could order it all out, so we could do 10, 10, 10, 10, 11, 11, right? Because there are 4 10s and 4 11s and 1 12 and 1 13, on and on and on. But since the data is already in order, I think it would be much easier just to count in with using the frequency column. So if we're counting up to 11, we're just doing 1 2 3 4, 5 6 7 8, 9, 10, and then our 11th will follow in this category. That would be 15 electoral votes. Therefore, 15, B, is our median for this data set. 23. Height versus time for a bouncing ball. As part of an experiment, a ball was dropped and allowed to bounce repeatedly off the ground until it came to a rest. The graph above represents the relationship between the time elapsed after the ball was dropped and the height of the ball above the ground. After it was dropped, how many times was the ball at height 2 feet? Okay, well, after it was dropped, it was at a height of 2 feet. Well, let's see. That would be a height of 2 feet, and therefore it was at the height of 2 feet there, there, and there. Well, that's going to be 3 times. It was at a height of 3 feet 3 times. A customer's monthly water bill was $75.74. Due to a rate increase, her monthly bill is now $79.86. To the nearest tenth of a percent, by what percent did the amount of the customer's bill increase? Okay, well, if we want to find percent, it's going to be part divided by the whole. Well, then we have to multiply by 100. So give us this first piece will give us a decimal. This first piece will give us a decimal, and then we're going to have to multiply by 100 to turn it into a percent. So the part is the amount of increase. Well, the amount of increase is the difference in the bills. So 79.86 minus 75.74. That would tell us the amount increase. We're going to divide that by the whole, and the whole in this case is the original price, the original bill, 75.74. Okay. All right. Well, I'm just gonna pull out my trusty calculator in this case. So 79.86 minus 75.74 is $4.12. This is a $4.12 increase out of $75.74. We're going to divide that by $75.74, and we'll get a decimal 0.0543. Okay. Now to convert that into a percent, like I said, we got to multiply by 100. So we have 0.054 times 100. Well, that's going to equal 5.4%. D would be our solution. 25. Some values of the linear function f are shown in the table above. What is the value of f of 3? Okay, well, it's very significant that they tell us this is a linear function, so we can assume that the rate of change in between all the data is equal, or is constant. Okay, so what is the rate of change? We are going to find the slope-intercept form. That comes up once again. So we need the slope with the rate of change, and we need the y-intercept. Well, it gives us the y-intercept. The y-intercept is the value of the function when the input is equal to 0. That's -2. Okay, so we just need the rate of change. Well, the rate of change is going to be the change in the output. That'd be from -2 to 4. That's going to be 6 over the change in the input. That's 2. Okay, well then our function is 3x minus 2. Okay, and we want to know what so I've been using y here, but we can use f of x. So f of x is 3x minus 2. And we want to know f of 3. Well, we're just going to put 3 in for our x, and we'll see that f of 3 equals 3 times 3 is 9 minus 2. That's 7. F of 3 equals 7. B is our solution. 26. A gear ratio, R to S, is the ratio of the number of teeth of two connected gears. The ratio of the number of revolutions per minute of the two gear wheels is S to R. In the diagram below, gear A is turned by a motor. The turning of gear A causes gears B and C to turn as well. Okay, so we got our diagram here. Gear A has 20 teeth, gear B has 60, and gear C has 10 teeth. If gear A is rotated by the motor at a rate of 100 revolutions per minute, what is the number of revolutions per minute for gear C? Okay, well, we're going to have to do a couple of conversions here. in one revolution on gear A, well, rather 100 revolutions, 100 revolutions of gear A is going to be, well, how many teeth would that be? Well, that would be 100 times 20. Okay, so that would be 2,000. It revolves 2,000 teeth per minute. So that is great. That means that past this point right here, we can say that gear A, 2,000 teeth on gear A pass that point every minute. Well, if 2,000 teeth pass that point on gear A, then 2,000 teeth must pass that point on gear B. And if 2,000 teeth pass that point here on the left, 2,000 teeth must pass the point on the right. Okay, well, if 2,000 teeth pass that point for gear B, well, likewise, 2,000 teeth must also pass that point for gear C. So gear C is revolving at 2,000 teeth per minute. 2,000 teeth are passing a single point every minute. Well, how many teeth are on gear C? There are 10 teeth on gear C. So to figure out the number of revolutions of C every minute, we take the number of teeth that are passing each point, or a single point, and divide it by the number of teeth of the gear. That gives us 2,000 divided by 10, which equals 200. So gear C is revolving at 200 revolutions per minute. Okay. 27. In the xy plane, the graph of 2x squared minus 6x plus 2y squared plus 2y equals 45 is a circle, which is the radius of the circle. Okay. This comes up at least once on all of the practice tests that I've seen this year. Okay, so we need to put this in general form. So to do that, we're going to need to complete the square for our x's and our y's. The general form is going to be x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. Okay, so we want a perfect square for x and a perfect square for y. And then we will move all of our constants to the right and then take the square root to find the radius. Okay. So the first step is we want to combine or gather our x's and gather our y's. We already have that. However, and our constants are all moved to the right. That's great. However, I'm going to rewrite this, except I'm going to leave a space because I'm going to add something in here to complete the square. Plus 2y squared plus 2y. I'm going to leave another space, equals 45. Okay. Now, to complete the square, we want our a terms, this guy and this guy, to be equal to 1. That would be pretty easy in this equation. I'm just going to divide everything by 2, or divide everything, let's see, there we go, divide everything by 2 on both sides of the equation. Okay, now I've got x squared minus 3x plus y squared plus y equals 45 halves. Okay, now a equals 1 in both of my, for my x's and my y's. Now I know that what I have to add to each piece is I need to make c equal b over 2 squared. Okay, well, for my x's, b over 2 squared is going to be negative 3 over 2 squared. It's going to be 9/4. Okay, well, I add 9/4. And I need to add, since I added that to the left side of my equation, I have to add it to the right side of my equation. And then for my y's, I need to add 1/2 of b squared. Well, for my y's, it's going to be, I'm just going to get this out of the way. It's going to be, well, 1/2 of 1, that's just 1 over 2 squared. That's going to be 1 over 4. So I add 1 over 4. I'm going to add 1 over 4 to the right side as well. Okay, so now it's perfect. I've got a perfect square on the left, and I have a perfect square on the right. Now it's I could factor the left, but really all it's asking about is what is the radius, and the radius is on the right side. So I'm just going to add terms on the right side. I know that 45 halves is 90/4, and 90/4 plus 9/4 plus 1/4, that's going to be 100/4. Well, that equals 25. Okay, so 25 is the radius squared, therefore the radius of the circle is 5. 28. Two different points on a number line are both 3 units from the point with coordinate -4. The solution to which of the following equations gives the coordinates of both points? Okay, let's see. So the two different points on a number line are both 3 units from the coordinate -4. Okay, so what coordinates are those? It's going to be 3 units to the left of -4. That's going to be -7, and 3 units to the right. That's going to be -1. So I think the easiest way to think about this is just, let's plug in some values here. Let's just look at number A, or answer A. -7 plus 4 is -3. Absolute value is -3. That works. Okay. -1 plus 4. That's 3. Absolute value of 3 is 3. Well, right away, A works. And we can go through the rest, and we'll see that these two values don't work to satisfy the equation, so we can move on. Number 29. A motor powers a model car so that after starting from rest, the car travels s inches in t seconds. There are where s equals 16t times root t. Which of the following gives the average speed of the car in inches per second over the first t seconds after the car starts? Okay, so let's see. So this gives us a position, and if we want the average speed, we want the change in difference, or not change in difference, the average speed is going to equal average speed is going to equal change in position, in this case s, over change in time. Okay, so we need to know the change in position over the first t seconds. Well, we're going from start from 0 from t equals 0 to t equals t. Okay, so we're going to plug in t into our position function, and that'll be 16t times root t, and then we'll plug in 0 into our difference function, which is just going to be 0. Right? And then we find the change in time, which is going to be t minus 0. So that's going to be 16t root t over t, and then the t's cancel out. We just have 16 root t is the average speed. 16 root t, that's b. Okay, 30. We have a scatter plot below shows the amount of electric energy generated in millions of megawatt hours by nuclear sources over a 10-year period. Of the following equations, which best models the data in the scatter plot? Okay. So, if we were going to model this, let's just look at these. All of these models are quadratic. They all model a parabola. So let's try and do a regression, a quadratic regression for this by hand. Not very precise, but let's see. Something like that. So it's clear that it opens down, right? So if a parabola opens down, then a must be less than 0, or a must be negative. So we can rule out a couple of these because those are going to be opening up. And now we just need to well, we could take advantage of the fact that we know the x value at the vertex. The x value is going to equal negative b over 2a. Now, let's see if that helps us. So we know that our x value is going to be something about positive 6. Okay, that helps. Let's look at our two possible equations. Well, in this equation, b is negative, right? Well, if b is negative and a is also negative, then negative of negative b, that'd be a negative of a negative over 2 times a, which is also a negative. Okay, well that's going to be a positive over a negative. Well, that's going to be a negative value, right? So we're going to have the b equation, this guy right here, is going to have an x-intercept at a negative x value. We clearly have an intercept at a positive x value, so D is our solution. And in fact, if you plug in, and in fact, B in this equation is positive, therefore it will have a positive x value at the vertex. So D is the solution. 31. A group of friends decided to divide the $800 cost of a trip equally among themselves. When 2 of the friends decided not to go on the trip, those remaining still divided the $800 cost equally, but each friend's share of the cost increased by $20. How many friends were in the group originally? Okay, so if we were going to, we know that we were going to take $800 and we were going to divide it amongst n people, and it was a certain cost. Well, we know that 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 cost increased by $20 when we know that increased by $20 when, well, it's still $800 when 2 decided not to go. Well, then it'd be 2 less than n. So on the left here, sorry, we have the original, what it was going to cost. Then it's an additional $20. Okay. So this is what each person has to spend currently after those 2 people left. Well, we also know that the $800 is going to be divided amongst n minus 2 people. So these two sides must be equal. Okay. Now, to solve this rational equation, I am going to clear the denominators. I can see that this first term is missing a factor of n minus 2. And this term over here is missing a factor of n. And then the center term is missing a factor of n and a factor of n minus 2. So I'm going to multiply everything times n times n minus 1, or 2. Okay, so I'm going to write this over here. So we got 800 over n, and we're going to multiply that by n and n minus 2, plus we're going to multiply 20 by n times n minus 2, and on the right side we're going to multiply that by n times n minus 2, and that's 800 over n minus 2. Well, in our first term, the n's are going to cancel out. In our last term, the n minus 2's are going to cancel out. So what we're left with is 800 times n minus 2 plus, well, I'm going to distribute this n. We got n times n, it's n squared minus 2n times 20. Over here we've got just 800 times n, or 800 n. Okay, so let's see. So we're going to have distribute over here. We're going to have 800 n minus 1600 plus n squared minus, distribute that 20n. We're going to have plus 20 n squared minus 40n equals 800n. I'm going to subtract 800n from both sides. Okay, and then I'm going to write this in standard form. That's going to be 20n squared minus 40n minus 1600 equals 0. Okay, now I'm gonna write everything up here. I'm gonna factor out a 20, divide everything by 20, both sides. I'll get n squared minus 2n minus, well, 1600 divided by 20. That's going to be 160 divided by 2. That's 80 equals 0. Okay, so to factor this, our a value is 1, so we're looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 80 and add to negative 2. Okay, well, I know right away that 8 times 10 is 80. Okay, so I think that if I use a negative 8 and negative 10 and a positive 8, that would work. So let's see. N minus 10 times n plus 8 equals 0. Okay, excellent. So we have here that n for our first factor could equal 10, and for our second factor could equal -8. Well, we're talking about how many friends there were. Well, there weren't -8 friends. Therefore, we say that there were 10 friends to begin with. 32. Okay, what is the value, or what value of x satisfies the equation above? Okay, so this looks like a linear equation. I think the easiest way to solve this is just going to be to distribute combine like terms and isolate the x. So let's get started. Distribute the 2, I'll get 10x minus 40. Distribute the negative, I'll get -15 minus 8x equals 7. Okay, I'm going to combine my like terms. On the left, I'll get 2x, these two guys, and then I'll get -55 equals 7. I'm going to add 55 to both sides. I'll get 2x equals 62, and then divide both sides by 2. 31 satisfies this equation. 33. A laboratory supply company produces graduated cylinders, each with an internal radius of 2 inches and an internal height between 7.75 inches and 8 inches. What is one possible volume, rounded to the nearest cubic inch, of a graduated cylinder produced by this company? Well, the volume of a cylinder, the volume of a cylinder is going to be the base, pi r squared, base area, times the height. So, in this case, we know that the volume is going to be, one possible volume is going to be pi r squared times the height, and it's between 7.75 inches and 8 inches, so let's say 7.8 inches. Okay, so the volume equals 4 pi times 7.8. And at this point, I think you can just type that into your calculator. That would be the fastest solution. We've got 4 times 7.8 pi. And we get 0.02. The question says to round to the nearest cubic inch. So let's just say that that is approximately 98 cubic inches. 34. In the xy plane, the graph of y equals 3x squared minus 14x intersects with the graph of y equals x. At the points 0, 0, and AA, what is the value of a? Very well. Let's do a little sketch. I always like to do a little sketch. We've got a graph, and we know that it's going to intersect with y equals x, which is just a line like so, and it's going to intersect in two places. Alright, so what are those 2 places? Well, this is a system of equations, and I think that it shouldn't be too difficult to solve. We already know that y equals 3x squared minus 14x, and we know that y equals x, so we can just do a direct substitution here. We can just say, well, if y equals x, then oh boy, there we get the pen. Then x equals 3x squared minus 14x. Okay, now this is a quadratic. To solve a quadratic, we need to set it equal to 0. So we have 3x squared minus 15x. Alright, so since we only have a binomial here, I think the easiest method would just be to factor common factors. So we can factor out a 3x. We get x minus 5 equals 0. Well, with these two factors, what makes 3x equal 0? Well, that's going to equal 0 if x equals 0. And then what would make x minus 5 equal 0? Well, when x equals 5. So we have an x value of 0. That would be maybe right here, maybe this one. Oops, at 0. And then we have an x value of 5. Well, we know that both points are a, so it's 5, 5. So a equals 5. 35. The line with the equation 4/5 x plus 1/3 y equals 1 is graphed in the xy plane. What is the x coordinate of the x-intercept of the line? Okay, well, we know that, or we should know that the x-intercept anywhere on the x-axis, doesn't matter where you are, the y value is 0. So if we want to find the x-intercept, all we need to do is plug 0 in for y. And if we do that, then this term disappears. Okay? So the equation we have to solve is 4/5 x equals 1. Well, to get rid of this coefficient, we need to multiply by the reciprocal. So multiply by 4/5 on, or sorry, 5/4 on both sides. These factors cancel out. We have x equals 5/4. So that would be the x-intercept. 36. Andrew and Maria each collected 6 rocks, and the masses of the rocks are shown in the table above. The mean of the masses of the rocks Maria collected is 0.1 kilograms, greater than the mean of the masses of the rocks Andrew collected. What is the value of x? Okay, so the mean is just the average, which is the sum divided by how many data points there are. If there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 data points, we're just going to take the average and then, take the sum and divide by 6. Okay? So I'm going to add up a sum for Andrew and a sum for Maria. Okay? Andrew's going to be 2.4 plus 2.5 plus 3.6 plus 3.1 plus 2.5 plus 2.7. Okay, that's 16.8. Maria is going to be 3.1 plus 2.7 plus 2.9 plus 3.3 plus 2.8. Okay, that's going to be 14.8. So the average for Andrew is 16.8 divided by 6. It's going to be 2.8. And we know that Maria's average needs to be 2.9. So her sum, when divided by 6, needs to equal, it's 0.1 greater than Andrew's, so that's 2.9. So it's 14.8 plus x. We don't know what x is. Okay? So it's going to be, I'm going to multiply both sides by 6. Oops. Plus x. Multiply both sides by 6. 2.9 times 6. I get 17.4. And then I'm going to subtract 14.8 from both sides, and I get 2.6. So x equals 2.6. Jeremy deposited X dollars in his investment account on January 1st, 2001. The amount of money in the account doubled each year until Jeremy had $480 in his investment account on January 1st, 2015. What is the value of X? Okay, so if he doubled each year, so that's going to be a exponential function equals a b to the x, right? Where a is your initial value, b is your common ratio. Okay, well, and in this case, x is going to be years. Okay, so our initial investment, we don't know what the initial investment is. Dollars in his account, okay. But we know that his account, it was, actually I used x here, but I should have used t. Okay. So, and I used a when I should have used x. Okay, that's fine. It does not really matter. In this case, x would not be our input variable. T would be our input variable for this function, our independent variable. X is just going to be a constant. Okay, so we know that at the end we had $480. Okay, we want to know how much the initial deposit was, and we know that it doubled every year. So doubled, well, that means multiplied times 2 every year. And well, how many years? It's from 2001 to 2005. That's four years. Okay, so that's 480 equals, well, 2 to the 4th. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. That's 16x. Okay, so I know 48 divided by 16 is 3, so that must be 30. So his initial deposit must have been 30 if he doubled every year, which is a pretty darn good investment, if you ask me. Okay. 38. A school district is forming a committee to discuss plans for the collection of a new construction of a new high school. Of those involved to join the committee, 15% are parents of students, 45% are teachers from current high school, 25% are school and district administrators, and the remaining 6 individuals are students. How many more teachers were invited to join the committee than school and district administrators? Okay, well, let's figure out what 100% is, and then we can figure out what these various percentages are. We know that there was 15 plus 45 plus 25. That was parents, teachers, and school admin, right? So that accounted for, well, 15 plus 45, that's 60, plus 25, that's 85% of everybody is accounted for. Now it says that the 6 remaining individuals were students, so that means that 6 individuals must correlate to 15%. Okay, well, then how many individuals account for 100%. So we have a proportion. 6 is to 15 as x is to 100. Okay, well, to isolate the x, we just have to multiply both sides by 100. We're going to get, I guess first I'll reduce this. I'll get, divide the top and bottom by 3. I'll get 2/5. Okay, I'll multiply both sides by 100. I'll get 200 over 5 equals x. Well, 200 divided by 5, 100 divided by 5 is 20. So 200 divided by 5 is 40. So 40, there are 40 people all together. Okay, and we want to know how many more teachers were invited than school and district administrators. Well, teachers are 45% are teachers and 25% are school admin. Okay, so 45%, 45% of 40. I'm not so sure about that. I'm just going to plug that into my calculator. I know it's going to be 40 times 0.45, and I know that teachers are going to be, admin are 25%, so that's going to be 40 times 0.25. Well, 40 times 0.45, that's 18. And 25%, well, I know that's a quarter, so that's going to be 10. So how many more teachers? Well, we know that the difference between these two is 8. 8 more teachers than admin were invited.